About 5 after, so we'll get rolling here. This is going to be really short. If anyone doesn't have the book yet, I do have a few left. So if you need to pick it up, just call me up and set up the time to get it. If you do already have it, our first list, our first assigned pages is 1 through 47, which is chapters 1 through 4, and that's by next Monday. And what I was going to recommend is that everyone start some sort of document, whether it's a Word doc or just a note in your phone or however you want to do it, but that you just open that up and you put in the questions that I'll email all you guys after if you didn't see it. But the questions are in the RSVP for this meeting if you look at the description. And they're basically, what was the top idea or quote you took from this section of the book? So when I read a book, I'll usually use a highlighter and highlight some things that I like. And if you do consolidate that into some sort of document, whether it's a note or a Word doc or whatever you use, it's great to like review that once in a while, to go back at a book that you did read, especially if it's something of ideas that you can apply into your training. So the second question is, what was a new concept that you got from the book that you hadn't heard of before, or it was described much differently? Third question is, was there any idea or concept that you disagreed with or don't feel you understand yet? And then finally, was there any idea, concept, activity, drill, workout, or plan to incorporate into your own training technique development, and how would you implement it? So some of these you might not find an answer to just in the first 50 pages. Some of that's more towards later on in the book. But if you reread those questions a few times and have that in the back of your mind as you're reading the book, it's going to be easier for you to find those points of interest. And I would love for you to write those down and then maybe even share those with me before the meeting as an email or a attachment or whatever that I could pre-read, because I may want to bring up what somebody wrote down or thought of as their interesting point, or to see how many people had similar points that they got from that section of the book. But I found from the limited amount of reading I've done in it, I do know the author, and I've talked to him many times on other topics and things like that, but this seemed like a very appropriate read for us, because a lot of you guys are late to swimming and you're trying to catch up to how can I get as fast as I can get in swimming, but not using traditional swimming methods, which is to start it when you're a little kid and do a whole lot of kicking and do a lot of specific drills and things like that. As we get older and we're doing other sports, we have to kind of prioritize how much time we're going to devote to the different sports, swimming being one of them, and swimming being the shortest duration at most races. But that doesn't necessarily mean it should always be the shortest amount of commitment to it. And there's certain times during the year when I think it's appropriate to spend more time on it, like the winter time. Although I think running's a good activity to do a lot in the winter and back off the biking a bit when it's more dark and cold and stuff. But those of you that don't consistently swim in the ocean, in a pool, in like an organized group like my Nova group, and you're just doing open water, then your amount of open water time is going to go way down during the winter time. And so what can you do during the winter to not lose it and have to start all over again when you start to coming back to swimming when it gets warm again? There's things that you'll learn from the book and things you'll learn from this discussion that we have of what can you do to maintain it through the winter, or do things that could improve your technique or your strength specific to swimming. And those are the kind of the things that I hope you'll come away with, having like a checklist of things that you could start to do in the next couple months, and by being accountable to having to come on to this and actually report what you learned, what you read, what you might incorporate into your own program, then that builds that little bit of accountability that will hopefully make you all be better when you come out of it at the end of the winter. And it doesn't take a lot of time or commitment to do it. I think that just a 15 to 30 minute commitment, at least 2 to 3 days a week, could really go a long ways towards maintaining fitness or even improving fitness. As we learned a little bit through COVID shutdown, doing soup can swimming, right, Ronnie? Like, that still kept our fitness pretty damn good. That, you know, with the limited amount of open water and 3 soup can practices a week, when the pool reopened, we weren't really too far behind where we had been. So I'm looking forward to hear, you know, your perspective of being different athletes of different ability levels and speed. What was like, what hit home for you when you're reading this? What did you learn? What do you not really understand that I might be able to clarify? And then how can we find pathways for each of you, which it might not all be the same pathway, because you all have different access to equipment or to pools or to open water or willingness to swim when it's cold or not. You got to kind of make some of those decisions as we go. But I think this could, you know, make you guys all better swimmers, or at least better understanding of what you need to do to get there, to be a better swimmer. And it's a little bit unorthodox concepts of what traditional swimming is to be fast. So that's kind of my points of what I had to say about it. I don't know if Natalie has anything she wants to add, but if any of you have any specific questions or comments, you're certainly welcome to do it. I don't know, maybe some of you have already answered some of these questions because you're ahead on the reading. Much like with the soup can swimming, part of why I developed it is it made me be accountable to have to be somewhere and do it. And I'm a really slow, lame reader, so this is making me do it as well.
Yeah, so I just started reading the book a couple nights ago, and I just found it pretty interesting as they introduced the concept between, I think it was Sam and Mitch.
Yes.
Talk
Sam.
a little bit louder, Nat.
What was that?
Yeah, get closer to the mic.
Yeah, okay. So as I was just reading a couple nights ago, I'm only about 12, 13 pages in, but I thought the idea with introducing the different swims strategies and tactics between the Sam and Mitch, you know, both of those swimmers, they were adult onset swimmers, and their strategies were entirely different. You know, one starts with like a very high volume to what Mike says, you know, typically if you're start swimming early, it's all about volume and obviously technique. But what this author also talks about is a time crunched athlete, but you don't have a lot of time. So how are you going to maximize your time and be able to improve performance? And I thought that analogy, I mean, I could really relate to, I think it was, who was, if anyone has gotten a few pages in, is it Sam is the one?
It's Sam. That's the one who did really well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he just, you know, he approached the swim. He was confident at the swim start. He had a really good strategy on how to draft and how to position himself. He was very in tune with his stroke, body positioning, and drafting. And he, you know, he came out of the swim feeling really strong and not depleted. And the complete opposite of Mitch. So I think it's really interesting the way he starts the book, because I think all of us can relate to one swimmer or the other. Has anybody started swimming or started reading the first chapter or so?
I did.
Okay, so as Laura Mitchell, I was really wounded by how on point the Mitch character was.
So
that's her new nickname. We're just gonna call her Mitch. So
is that a character that you can identify with?
Oh yeah, no, I'm totally Mitch, and you can all call me Mitch. It will throw me back to junior high school. It's all good.
Okay. Anyone else have a thought on the Sam and Mitch and their two strategies on how they apply their time for swimming?
I sandbag all my swims in a race.
Yeah, and that's not a good strategy. Like you do.
I do. I don't want to get tired.
You can start using it as a strength instead of a weakness or just a sandbag. You know, it's like that's an opportunity to assert yourself. And a lot of people realize if you swim faster, you're less fatigued because you weren't in the water so long.
Yeah. And I found what was really interesting just from a mindset standpoint, like when Sam gets out of the water, there's not a lot of bikes. I mean, the rack is filled with bikes because he came out as expected. And then Mitch comes out, he's totally depleted, and half the bike racks are empty. And talk about the mindset of starting your second leg, feeling like, holy shit, I'm like, totally have no energy, I'm completely depleted, and I'm way back further than I ever expected to be. So, there you are.
She's walking in the house.
You're walking in the house?
She needs her mute on.
So I have a question. I haven't done the book yet. I'll try to pick it up from you, Mike, on Wednesday if you have one there.
Oh, so sorry. I didn't give it to you yesterday. I had it.
Oh, no worries. So my question is, what do you think is the likelihood, or what do you think is the percentage of races going forward that are going to be rolling starts as opposed to mass starts?
Anything.
That's a really good question. And I definitely see that as being an issue for a while. And I've started to change my mindset a little bit on how to approach training and racing because I don't see there being a lot of mass starts anymore for a while. Yeah, I definitely don't see that. So there's definitely a little bit of differences in how we train because we really used to, for open water, it's all about going out fast without killing yourself and then settling into a pack and just trying to maintain your energy. And then hopefully you have good enough form or can give a little bit of a boost at the end if you're fit to gap yourself, give a little distance because it is nice to gap people a little bit at the end and then put a distance on them starting off the bike. But now with rolling start, there's a lot of different type of strategies and like how far back do you start or how close to the front? Can you make up a lot of time starting a little bit further back and swimming through people, but then having people to ride with on the bike that are a similar speed? So kind of depends on the distance of the race. A lot of new information or things that we have to figure out, which is kind of interesting to me to kind of have to relearn how to do it. Because definitely just within the way we've run practices at the open water, we haven't done as many like mob going in. We've been doing more stagger start things and slowest to fastest. And can you stay with someone when they go by you? Because really the fastest way to swim is to not go out super fast at the beginning. It's to be a more even pace or even a little under your potential at the beginning and then build into it and finish strong. That's really the way to swim the fastest overall time if you're time trialing. But just like with bike racing, there's this group dynamics that if you're with a pack, it's much better than being by yourself. And so there's going to be some element of both mixed in when we go to some of these races when they're rolling starts. And it's going to be a tough nut to crack to figure out what is the best scenario. And it could be, much different for you than for me. Whereas if we were all doing a mass start, it wouldn't be so different. You just, start wide, go around the buoy without getting run over, and then try to find the right feet to get on. It's funny how, that's like the easy way. I used to think that was complicated, but now that's easy compared to rolling starts, figuring out the dynamics of that.
Good question. And I think with rolling, Ryan, to your question with rolling starts, and I think it's going to be a challenging scenario because I find in rolling starts that people don't seed themselves properly, and it ends up being a chaotic swim to begin with. So if that changes, that will be a telling sign. But typically with a rolling start, you're going to want to seed yourself probably in a group just slightly faster than you.
I always do that.
Because unfortunately, a number of people who seed themselves slightly faster are misseeded to begin with. Would you?
Gene, you ignorant bitch. Remember that from Saturday Night Live? Oh, Jane, you ignorant slut. That was it. Jane, you ignorant slut. To counterbalance that point, I did a race in Florida that was not a long race. It was like an Olympic distance or a sprint race. And they did staggered starts by your age group and your time when you went over the mat. And so they were like 5 minutes apart. And so my age group started at, let's just say 7:05. And I go, I think I swim faster than a lot of these guys. So I'm going to lay back and I'm going to run across the mat like 20 seconds after the time starts. And then I think I could still catch and pass everyone. And I did. I ran in, passed everyone, still came out of the water near the front or at the front, got on the bike. I'm riding hard on the bike. And I get caught by like a pack of dudes going by. And I see a guy in my age group in this pack drafting. And I'm pissed, you know, and I don't get in. And he put some gap on me. And then I was laughing at him because when we came into transition, I wasn't too far back. He didn't know where his bike rack was because it was a really long transition area. And I saw him lost and I went flying by him. My bike, get on my shoes. I take off running. So I beat him out of transition and I'm running. And he catches me and he passes me. And I'm like, fuck, I'm going to get second. And I had totally forgotten that I actually started about, 20 seconds back. I didn't know where he started. So I keep pressing and I run to the line, but he obviously beat me. And when the final results came out, I beat him by like 3 seconds or 2 seconds. It was some really small margin that I beat him by because I started after him. So if you're a good swimmer and not a good runner, sometimes you're better off like letting a gap open, making up that time, then racing with people. And then if they beat you in the sprint, you may have enough time gap that even if they outran you at the end, you end up finishing ahead of them. So that's what I mean about it's complicated. And it's not always in your best interest to go first. If you're a very strong swimmer, I think you might want to go back a little bit of where you normally should be if you're good at passing people. And making up a bunch of time that once you're together, if I'm running with you, I'm really 30 seconds ahead of you because I started 30 seconds behind you. So a little bit different mindset.
Yeah.
So every race is going to be a little different, and longer races, maybe not as vital, but in that particular instance, it was in my best interest that I let the gap open and then went after them.
Hey, Mike, I have a question. Might be jumping a little ahead of myself. But now, given the conditions, right, that they're incorporating social distancing in swim starts and stuff like that, for big races like Ironman Arizona, there is a good probability you might be in your wetsuit for about 30 to 40 minutes before you can actually get in the water, and not having the probability to warm up. You're jumping into cold water, right? So how do you cope up with those conditions from being hot in your wetsuit to jumping into cold water and, starting?
That's really not that different from what existing conditions have been. It's just like, I haven't pursued it yet, but I'm thinking of contacting Ironman and maybe some other, maybe USAT and stuff. And I really think that they're going to need to start to issue wristbands, just like they do race numbers in a marathon, of like the slow people can't just go to the front. You're in the front corral if you can run a sub 3 hour marathon. And then you're in this corral if you're 3 hours to 3:15, and you're in this corral, and you have to have a proven time to be in that corral. And I think they're going to need to do that with swimming, so that there isn't a big preload of time that you have to, line up and be around all these people so long. It's like, don't even come to the start to corral until one corral before you go. And the first corral, you have to have a wristband that says you can swim an Ironman swim under an hour, or you can swim a half Ironman swim under 28 minutes, or whatever it is. But just have these corrals by your wristband, and you can't even go in until like right before they start sending you off. So I think that might be a solution that I don't know if they've even thought of yet, but I'm hoping that it will be. But this is to my reason of when I did Arizona, I was near the front in the corral, but I could not warm up. They didn't let anyone in the water. And I had a pretty bad experience of going out way too hard at a swim previously and got all hyperventilated and just really cost me time. So I had pre-planned that my first 400 swim or 5 minutes or so was going to be very easy swim, not stressed, not worried about what place I was in or who I was passing or whatever, that I was just going to go well under my potential and then build into it. And so I picked a point that I was going to swim to, which from the start at that time was under the 2 bridges because we started behind them. Now it's a different start. But I just picked a point that I was going to swim to, not racing yet, and then get into it. And it worked very well because I didn't get hyperventilated. I felt fine. Nobody really swam faster than me, even in the first easy part. And then I just picked people off that went out pretty hard or started ahead of me all through the swim. And that was good, you know, like motivation if you're passing people. So it gets harder the further back you get and the bigger the egg of the snake gets and all that. But I think you have to have that strategy of, especially in a longer race, that you can afford to give away the first 2 or 3 minutes of swimming easy and building into it and then hitting the gas. And it's one of the reasons why I was talking to you guys about on Wednesday mornings is I kind of want you to like just have your wetsuit on for 10 or 15 minutes before you even get in. And there is no warm up. You just get in and you go. And, you know, your first lap should not be your fastest lap. Doesn't need to be way slower, but it should be your slowest lap of all the laps you do. And so if you guys have been doing that at practice, and Jen and Nora, you guys have been, I think you're going to kind of have that confidence going in to know, hey, I can go easy on the first lap and it's only like 8 or 10 seconds slower in a 500 when I go easy, you know, and then you settle into your even pace stuff. And then when you go full gas, you're only like another 5 or 10 seconds faster. And was that worth it? Not really, you know, so it's good to still do it just to see how much faster are you when you really hit it on the last one. But you kind of find there's this like nice little sweet spot that you can be in, that you're doing a pretty good time or pace for you, and it's very sustainable. But being a little softer, easier than that at the beginning is really going to pay a lot of dividends versus going out after it at the beginning and just getting all seized up, which is definitely what's going to happen once again. It pretty much happens at every Ironman, but certainly now when how many people have not had enough swim preparation because they haven't had access to pools, they're going to be all nervous. They're going to go out way too hot.
Yeah, one of my goals is to do a decent swim and not give it all up in transition one like I did the first year.
Good goal.
All right, good one.
No changing the contacts out.
Don't get me started, Jen.
So my Ironman transition expectations of people, including myself, is, to me, 5 minutes is the standard. So your 2 times added together, 10 minutes total for your 2 transitions is a reasonable time. If Arizona has a super long run from the swim exit, then that may be adjusted a little bit. But, you know, 5 minutes at each transition is enough time to do all the stuff you need to without being rushed and crazy and just running out with doing all the prep you need to do. But every minute you waste over 10-minute total, it's just stupid because you have to, it's a lot harder to run a minute faster per mile if you had an 18-minute transition or something like that. So
Remember that.
We were wondering where you were, Nor.
I did everything you're not supposed to do in a transition, and you cannot possibly beat that.
well, you know, Mr. Dan still has you beat by a mile in time spent in transition.
Okay. So
All right, gang. So let's get on reading the book. First 70.
Who doesn't have
How many pages?
47?
47 pages.
47, 4 chapters.
Who still needs the book?
Do you have a book, Catherine?
Yeah.
All right.
Everybody
Mike,
else?
I'll pick it up from you on Wednesday.
Hey, Tom.
Great.
And
Well,
Mike, can I
They
pick up?
also have it on Kindle because I found out and I was falling asleep and I turned the Kindle on so I could last a little bit longer.
Watching, guys.
yeah. So you did on, but Kindle doesn't read it to you. That's what I like. I like it.
Audible.
There's Audible.
I wish it was on an audiobook because that's how I like it. Get in the car, you
Audible
can't
too.
sleep, you're driving.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah, but it's pretty interesting. I mean, me, myself, I've never been coached, only when I was a little kid to survive, a girl. And I mean, the way I learned swimming and even when I started triathlon was just listening to peers and like advices from people. And I mean, it's pretty interesting because what I've read so far is that it doesn't matter how many hours you put into it, but the quality on the trainings. And I didn't know there was a trainer for swimming and I had to Google it and like look into it. So that's interesting too. And also the importance of like we are very lucky to have access to open water because sometimes you don't have to be a perfect pool swimmer, and being in open water helps you because I mean we all know about the chop and everything, but sometimes you don't have to have a perfect stroke when you are in open water. Actually, that doesn't help you. And something also, I mean, me that English is not my first language. Something pretty cool that I found is the way they compare the swimmer body to like a prone board or a kayak, and how like to keep straight and stay out of the water and the way you kick. So far I'm about to finish chapter 4, but so far it's pretty interesting and there's a lot of knowledge and to be humble enough to identify myself as a beginner and to like even compare myself to other swimmers. So I think I'm gonna get a lot of this book. And Mike, don't get upset with me, but since I entered the SEALs, I've never been interested in like being the fastest or being like doing PRs or podium or all that because I'm realistic, but I have been improving without even like being obsessed with my times, like with some friends that I have here on Strava. But I don't know, it's self-rewarding and I think it's gonna get better.
All right, people. Well, thanks for tuning in for the first mini episode. And again, next week, do your homework. Answer those questions if you can. Email them over to me in advance so I can like read through some, and I might ask a few of you questions on it or read them off or whatever. And hopefully we'll all have a little deeper understanding, sharing the ideas that we picked up from the book, and then how we can apply it into our own swimming. So thanks everyone for coming, and we'll see you next week, if not at practice before that, right?
Thanks.